Hello and welcome back to the WTF Sunderland podcast, live from Portugal as we count down the days and the hours until the playoff final against Sheffield United at Wembley on Saturday. I think we're all getting in the mood a little bit now, so I thought we'd add another guest to the mix in order just to up the anticipation a little bit even more. But before I do that, I'll introduce someone who you might be a little bit sad to hear from. It's the ever faithful Dave Lawrence. Dave, you're not in Portugal, mate. You're in Belgium.
I am indeed, yeah. Just trying to pass away some time before Trafalgar Square, really. Trying to keep feet on the ground, but it's never quite easy. It definitely feels like quite a big one, this one, doesn't it?
A little bit, mate, but it is what it is. I'm actually quite calm, like really, really calm. I might change by Friday, but I don't know. I'm calm and all right. But last but not least, I'm delighted to welcome the Sunderland Echo's Phil Smith for his first appearance on Sunderland's Worst podcast. I'm really sorry that you've had to join us tonight, mate. But how are you doing? You all right?
I can't believe it. Sunderland's worst journalist is taking this long to get on Sunderland's worst podcast. It's finally a meeting of minds. It's an absolute pleasure, boys. Thank you very much for having me. Lovely to be with you.
It's like when the what is it when an immovable object meets? I can't remember the exact saying, but I know what I mean. I know what I mean. Look, I'll start with you, Dave. First, I think depending on when you listen to this, like I say, there's not too much long left until we'll be down London or Trafalgar or wherever it may be. You obviously had a bit of a different experience last time. This time you're going to be in amongst the crowd. You're going to be in with us, not in the gantry. How much are you looking forward to getting sort of in and amongst it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did experience Trafalgar last time against Wickham the night before. That was wild. I still look back on my phone now and just watch. I think I got there ridiculously early because, as we all know, I can't sit still for very long. So I think I got there about 4:10, and then just watching the videos until I left at about midnight. It's just banter enough watching the police, like kind of 4:10, put that away. Right, we're taking that off you. We're taking that off you. 8:10, they wouldn't dare. Absolutely brilliant. But no, it's always good atmosphere. And then to be in amongst it on Saturday, yeah, probably the more this podcast goes on, I'm probably going to be a bit more nervous by the end of it, let's be honest.
And that would be nervous about. It's all about having fun. Honestly, I'm dead calm. But Phil, one of the reasons we got you on was it's always a different experience for you. It has been the past, what will be your fifth time. And I can understand, and obviously people know my job is covering certain things. I understand, I've been lucky enough to cover Champions League, Old Firm and derbies. I've done 2 games at Wembley, but never ever covered Sunderland. Never had the privilege of covering a league game, let alone at Wembley. So obviously you're a fan of the club. What's the anticipation like though when you're doing it from the press box and knowing that you're going to be doing it a different way to maybe the way that I or Dave will be doing it?
Yeah, it's like it's proper pinch yourself stuff, I think, is the first thing. Like when I get my little pass and it's got my Wembley press box seat number on and stuff, it's a feeling. Well, people probably can imagine how that feels. It's that little thing of, or you almost want to say it yourself, I wish I could tell little Phil when he was, in the Premier Concourse at 8 or 9, that this is you get to do this because it's such an exhilarating feeling. And obviously, as you can probably imagine, and I'm sure it's the same for you, Graham, in terms of the work you do. Obviously, the more you do it, you get a little bit more cynical. The more you spend time in football, and you get a little bit more weary, and things do change, and your relationship with the game changes, and all that stuff. Wembley is probably one of the days where all that goes away, actually. And you really do sort of pinch yourself. I think, to be fair, once the game starts, you are in work mode. Like, people probably have a sense of how many words I write on a Wembley final day. And to be fair, once the game kicks off, you're kind of in it then. And to be quite honest, like you don't really come up for air often until like 9-10 o'clock, to be honest. And then you kind of have that like deep breath. And actually the second leg against Coventry was the same in that it wasn't until I got home and like poured a whiskey to settle my nerves and started watching the videos back that I was like, oh my God, like, did that really just happen? Because obviously, as you can imagine, when Ballard heads it in with the last kick of the game, it's just rewrite time, and then it's into the press conferences and all that. So sometimes it's not until you actually get to sit down a few hours later that you're like, what just happened? But yeah, I'm so excited. I'm so lucky to have been able to do it multiple times. Yeah, it is real pinch yourself stuff.
I'm guessing your first experience would have been Man City 2014, but I remember, and I know there'll be some people that maybe are thinking, oh, like I don't do that for a job and stuff like that. But the first time I went to Wembley was for a Lionesses game, and that was like, whoa, we're covering Sunderland. Must be, as Sunderland fans, but it's hard to put into words. What was the first experience like for you? Because I'm guessing it was Man City. It's your fifth time, isn't it?
No, so this is my fifth. So the first one was Portsmouth. So I've done. So I've been at the Echo 8.5 years. So I've done Portsmouth, Charlton, Tranmere in the Papa John's, and then Wickham. So the first one I've still got really positive memories of, to be honest. Just the whole weekend, the Portsmouth one. I know obviously the end result wasn't what you wanted, but obviously like it wasn't the end of the world that we lost that game. And actually, I remember like Trafalgar was incredible. I was at uni at the time when Man City won, so it was my first trip to the new Wembley full stop, fan or journalist. And I still have such positive memories of that whole weekend. The McGeady equaliser was incredible moment, like real goosebumps stuff. So that was, even though the end result ended up being really disappointing, I still have quite fond memories of that whole weekend. The Charlton one, I can't think of a single positive memory from that weekend. It was just because there wasn't the sort of quite the same level of excitement and novelty from the Portsmouth one because we'd been a few months before. Obviously, the season had been flat. The team wasn't playing great, and then just the way the game went. That one, I mean, I don't know how you two feel about that one, but that's just one. If there was a game that I could just wipe from history, I think I'd probably just about sit on that one, I think. But yeah, the Portsmouth one I still remember really, really fondly because, that really did feel like, because of everything that we've gone through, in terms of the back-to-back relegations and stuff, that felt like a really special thing for the city to take over Trafalgar and to all be there and have that massive crowd. And so I still have fond memories of that one. The Charlton one less so, I have to say. I don't know if that's just me or whether you two feel the same about that.
The Charlton game, I've got one. I better say I've got one good memory. It was mine and Ashley's first date, but I remember just sitting in eating a pizza somewhere after the game and just I really wanted to impress this girl that's now my fiance. And if I'm completely honest, I was just sitting there going, "What's Flanagan doing? What was Flanagan doing? Like, why is he not on his man if he's in the right spot?" So no, Charlton's up there with for me. England in Italy in the penalty shootout. It was like the best way to put it was another kick in the knackers to a really difficult period of time. But
Yeah.
one thing I totally forgot about there, the Tranmere game. Like, I remember, I mean, that's when me and you started doing the podcast and stuff, Dave, when we started chatting during the COVID era. And it was just like desperation to get back to it. But for you, you're covering a game. I've covered a COVID game before. And it was eerie and weird, but it wasn't a big
Yeah.
stadium. It was like 10,000. How did that differ?
It was really eerie for the first probably 70 minutes, I think. Like you can hear like the ventilation and stuff, which is just to be in Wembley, like you can hear all that stuff, and it's just so weird and there's no atmosphere. I have to say the really odd, like surreal part of that day was actually, if you remember, like Sunderland didn't play particularly well that day, really. It was a pretty average final. And actually the last 20-25 minutes, Tranmere, I wouldn't say they were on top. They never truly looked like they were going to score, but obviously, while it was still 1-0, it was still very much alive. And at that point, actually, there could have been 100,000 people in the stadium on none. You still had that feeling of like tension and nerves. And it was weird because it's still a really, really sort of happy memory for me that day because it was a proper humble brag in the pub for a couple of years that I could say I was one of a handful of Sunderland fans who'd seen Sunderland win in the new Wembley. I was like part of a really select group. And of course, we went there and won in front of about 90,000 18 months later. So it doesn't quite have the same fondness that it did at the time. But yeah, it was weird. It was really surreal until the jeopardy came in later in the game. And then actually you're just watching the game and you've got the nerves and you're thinking about your deadlines and stuff like that. But yeah, really surreal day. But I have to say, that is still a really, really happy memory for me to like see someone break that curse. And I do think it played a part when we went back for the Wycombe one that no one was talking about, the Wembley hoodoo, and all the players had, yes, fans or no fans, had just been there and won. And I do think it really helped build that quiet confidence that nobody wanted to admit, but I think everyone had ahead of that Wycombe game. So I do still think it was an important day, even if now it all feels a little bit surreal.
Dave, I wanted to ask about your experience as well. It's a great video. I love watching it back. You just shouting, "Surely, surely," and you got like 90 seconds of airtime or something, which is probably more than you deserved. But when I watched it back, look, on a serious note, it was good fun. And we got a message that day, and someone said, "Look, will you come on and do the commentary and the gantry?" And I was like, "Absolutely not. No, I'm going with my missus, and I'm going to be right in amongst it. Because if we bag a goal, I'm going in." And I spoke about it in the group chat, and Dave, you went, "Well, look, I wouldn't mind doing it." I says, "Look, crack on, like good fun." I had no idea what I was putting myself in for. You could have completely ruined the podcast, but as it was, you didn't. You did a sterling job. But I remember I actually really like chatting to you about it because your experience was so different because you weren't like Phil, for example, you weren't working, you weren't having to type things and write things down, which I know what it's like. You could experience it, but at the same time, you weren't within the mire of that flail and bodies when Ross Stewart went in. And I just think, look, whilst we're on the subject of covering a Sunderland game from a different angle, what was that whole experience like for you? Because you were on the pitch before the game, you were chatting to people before the game. It was like it really was an experience that I wish I could have had, and I wish I hadn't given to you. And it's the only reason I keep you on board is just in case, they ask us to do it again, I can get you back. But on a serious note, I've had too many ports here, by the way. I'm enjoying Portugal a bit too much. How was the experience? Because I've heard the story and I think it's a nice one. It's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely surreal. You can never underestimate fate and timing and things sometimes. And I'll never forget traveling to Wembley and getting there, and then my sisters wanted a picture on the steps. And next thing I know, there's this suited and booted bloke there, and he goes, "Do you mind taking a picture of me and the family?" And I went, "Yeah, yeah, of course, absolutely not." So he gives us his phone, and there's this bloke, really, like I say, suited and booted, his wife and his two kids, and I'm taking a picture on the stairs, and he shook my hand. He goes, "Thanks a lot." I said, "Just out of interest, I'm 4 hours early, but just so I've got an idea of where I'm going." And anyway, he was the head of the AFL, and he said, "Come with us this way." And like security wasn't an issue. We're just barging past everyone. There's queues of people, and I'm like, "All right." This he gives us this pass. He goes, "As long as you're with me, you can go anywhere you want." He goes, "But your pass restricts you to here." So the next thing I know, I'm down by the side of the pitch. He said, "Right, up until that advertising board there, that's fine. I've got to go do some work, obviously. But every time I walk past, just tag on with us, come along." And, so I'm standing there, and the first person I'd probably encountered and had a great chat with and couldn't be any more down to earth was David Prutton. Um, Absolutely salt of the earth, just unbelievable. And I've through running pubs, bars, cooking, whatever, I've met some quite famous people, and I don't really do starstruck. But then one thing that will reminisce with is next thing I know, Kevin Phillips has stood beside us, and I'm just like, Jesus, like, what do I do here? What do I say? What questions do I ask? I've probably got like 3 minutes of probably one of my biggest idols in life here. So I had a chat with him. Then David James turns up, has a big crack with him. Then we ends up in the tunnel, and like a really different feeling. But we all know the loving that I've had for Ross Stewart over the years, and he just walks straight past us, give us a little wink. It's something you don't get to experience ever as a fan, let alone just be regular Joe Blogs. And yeah, so that was the build up of the game. Then getting up onto the gantry, tried throwing a few daggers at Andy Hinchcliffe because we all know how much he hates us, So made sure I give him a few snidey looks. And then the girl that I was doing the commentary with, the Wickham girl, she was lovely, but there was very much a dynamic of like someone's going to take the lead here and someone's not. And obviously, me being the chopsy arsehole that I am, ended up taking the lead. And it again, like you guys will know better than me, but all those cliches, they're cliches for a reason because it does genuinely happen. I think 2 minutes before she'd been telling us about how good a season David Stockdale had had, and then Embo smashed one off the laces of his boot and didn't appear to do too well with that. And then that second one, the reason for that, surely, we've been watching the game. Bailey Wright had got stuck in the mud a little bit, hadn't he? And that one half chance where Pato's managed to save it with his shin and knee, I think. And once Roscoe hit that, I think if you watch back the video, you can actually sense that as soon as he shifts that onto his right foot, I know exactly where it's going. And the Shuley moment, which is probably quite synonymous against us lot, is it's just pure relief. It's pure elation. It's pure ecstasy. And then really weirdly, as you say, because I'm not in amongst it, the one thing that I asked the two guys who'd been chaperoners around from Sky Bet, I said, just do me a favor. I'm doing this, but please be families in hospitality. Just get me to hospitality. As soon as the final whistle's done, anything extra you need us to do, just do it. But I have to be with my family. And then just got there and yeah, absolutely surreal day. Wouldn't swap it for the world, even dancing and being a lunatic in amongst all the lads and fans and lasses. Yeah, absolutely special day, to be honest.
Looking back to the Wickham game, Phil, I think for me it felt different from the minute we were in the playoffs. The run we were on, everything about it at the time, I just felt dead confident and dead calm. I'm weirdly calm at this moment in time as well, but the form hasn't been quite as good as it was then. But for you, yeah, part of your role is kind of understanding what's happening in and around a football club. It's your own football club, and I think you probably felt something quite similar as well. But what was it that felt different for you before the Wickham game? Because I've heard a few people say, yeah, it just felt different. Why did it feel different?
I think a big part of that was Alex Neil. I think that there was a couple of different aspects to it. One was that um, he was a pragmatist, and I think that those managers tend to do well in playoff situations. And interestingly, that was one of the reasons why, despite the form, I felt okay-ish coming into these semi-finals. Because I think Lebris is the same. I think he picks his team for the game ahead, not because of some idea of how he wants football to be played. And I think you always felt with Alex Neil that you would have a good game plan for each game. And I think he managed the club, the emotions of the club, which again is something he shares with Lebris, so well. And I think he just spread so much calm to the place and also the fans as well. You really did feel as if, that he was in control. He was calm. And I think that the main thing was you felt like the jeopardy. It's easy to say in hindsight. You felt like the jeopardy was at Hillsborough, right? You felt like that was the game where Sunderland could play well and still get knocked out. Sunderland could get overrun a little bit. I think having come through that, and I have to say that after who was it who scored Sheffield Wednesday's goal? Was it Gregory or Smith? Anyway, it's striker. The atmosphere in Hillsborough in the 5 minutes after that goal was incredible, like incredible. And and I am talking like Ballard the other night, good. And you just felt this is where it gets won or lost because you just felt this. They will not have another test like this at Wembley. If they can get through this moment, then they will feel like they're invincible going to Wembley. And that's why, for me, like maybe in time I probably will see Ballard as topping it, but that's why Roberts' goal is still probably my favourite ever Sunderland goal because the way that they rode that pressure, the way that they dug in the game, the release from that goal. I am pretty good at staying in the moment in the press box and focusing on my work and not getting too sucked in, but I always say to Scott Wilson from the Northern Echo, I nearly sent him flying about 14 rows, just from as much from like relief as much as like joy or anything else. It was just an incredible moment, and I think that just spread so much confidence around the group um, heading into Wembley. Because the thing about Alex Neil was the football wasn't always brilliant. The football actually got better when we got the Championship. It got more attacking, it got more fluid, it got more aggressive. The football wasn't always great towards the end of that season, but we looked solid. We just looked solid, and he got the experienced players in the team. And it's easy to say in hindsight, you knew they were going to win, but I think he just transformed the mood around the place. And as I say, while they're very different personalities, they share some similarities. Neil and the Briss, very, very good one-to-one sort of tacticians for each game, and also very, very calm. But yeah, I think a lot of it stemmed from Alex Neil. Obviously, the way it ended is the way it ended, but those whole playoffs was a 10 out of 10 management job from Alex Neil.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking to Corey Evans about it the other week, and I asked him what the big difference was, and he mentioned Alex Neil before he even took breath. One of the disadvantages you touched on there, you can't necessarily celebrate in the press box. You're not meant to anyway. I've never done it, never covered Sunderland, so I've never had to. But I think one of the plus points of covering any game really is that stuff other people maybe don't see, like the emotion and the excitement of a game. Like I love seeing the reactions of Old Firm, like after an Old Firm, what that's like, whichever way it swings, because it's such an emotional and such a passionate game. And you can see they can feel if they've lost. You can see the players that have lost, you can see they're like, oh God, I've got 7 days of just horribleness. And the ones that have won are like, brilliant, I'm God for the next fortnight, whatever it may be. When you're in Wembley, especially when you're in that mix zone, I've seen players come past and you grab them and you pull them and stuff like that. What was it like after that win against Wickham and the mood around the place after they'd won? And is there anything that sticks in your mind from that day, particularly from the job that you do as opposed to as a fan?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of aspects to it. The first one was obviously full time's by far and away my busiest period. And so usually my head is kind of down at that point. I do remember making a mental note to myself to say, take a minute, actually stop typing and look up. Because what was amazing for me personally about that Wickham game was it was the first time of all the games where the press box is in the Sunderland end. So for the Portsmouth and Charlton games, I was with the Portsmouth and Charlton fans. That was the first one where I was actually in the Sunderland end. And when the wise men say, and then Wonderwall and all of that, I actually said to myself, no, you have to see this and take it in because you might never see this again. You have to enjoy this moment. So I did that. And then I remember I went to because obviously, as you just said there, it's then professional head on press conference, mixo and all that kind of stuff. So I went to the loo. I didn't need the loo. I just went and stood in the cubicle and just looked at the wall for a minute to just be like, right, breathe. Because you gotta start again here. And coming out of the loo, and then all the players were going up to get the trophy, literally at the same time. And it was just like a bit of like, oh, whoa. And seeing the buzz on their face, and then down into the press conference and Alex Neil swaggering in. And you can imagine Alex Neil swaggers after a win, swaggering in with this massive can of Stella. I swear to God, it's the biggest can of Stella I've ever seen in my life. And just taking periodic breaks through his press conference to have a swig of this can of Stella. Yeah, it's a really special memory for that whole day. But you know, as you can imagine, Graham, because you'll have been in a similar scenario, like you try and soak it all up. But it's really important that you do the job well as well. Like you really want to get to the end of the day and be like, you know, because it's a big event and you want to feel like you've done it justice as well. So you got to find that balance between soaking the moments up and enjoying it, but also being like switched on and staying really, really present and making sure you're not missing anything and stuff like that. But yeah, I can see Alex Neil coming in with his kind of Stella so clearly, even now. But even in that press conference, he made a few comments about the step up to the Championship, the budget, the work that was going to have to be done, all this kind of stuff. So even in those moments, you're just picking up stuff. You're picking up that he's laying those little seeds a little bit, and you think that's interesting. And then sure enough, what was it? 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, whatever it was. You know, he's gone to Stoke, and so that's why you got to stay switched on because everything is interesting. You know, as you know yourself. And yeah, sometimes you look back, it takes you a while, and you look back on those little moments and you think, oh yeah, that was interesting, you know? But yeah, I'm just rambling about the day. It was just the sights and the sounds, man. That's the stuff you take with you to the grave, isn't it? It really is.
I think one of the aspects that people, I don't really want to talk about defeats at Wembley, but if we don't talk about Wigan, we kind of have to. Um, Something I always find really interesting I talked before about covering big games. If a team gets beat, the players that sort of step up and sort of front up to the media almost if they got beat. And I always feel like when they come out, like for example, Leon Balogun, I know this is completely nothing to do with Sunderland, but Leon Balogun will always be out if it's an Old Firm defeat. He's always the first one to kind of stick his chest out and speak about it. Is there any players that you, like after a Sunderland defeat, which is always difficult at Wembley, that came out, spoke to the fans via the medium of media, kind of stuck their chest out a bit, that impressed you even when things didn't go well?
Not sure if I can remember specifically about Wembley. One thing I will say about the League One era was that Max Power was excellent for that. Max would always put his hand up and do it, no matter how badly he played. Went through that little run where he kept getting sent off. I remember fairly soon after that, he came out and did the press. I certainly remember a game at Shrewsbury. I think it was the game where Jordan Willis first did his knee, actually. Freezing cold Tuesday night. And at that point, it looked like someone might have blown promotion. They were terrible. And Max came out and was excellent. Gave me a lot of time, was really upfront. So yeah, when you asked me that question, the first, certainly from the League One era, the first person that sprung to mind was Max. He was excellent for that. Tom Flanagan was good as well. Tom Flanagan was just a really normal bloke, to be honest, like really, really down to earth. And he was always good. In this current squad, obviously, I guess we would see if they didn't win at Wembley, but I have to say that it's a really good group, this one. There's lots of players who are really good in those science scenarios. I mean, it would be no surprise to anyone when I list the name, but Dan Neil, Luke O'Nien, Trey Hume, I could go on really. Chris Mepham, Dan Ballard, there's loads. It's a really good group. And I think that's one of the things that Lebris has done so well, actually. He's really created, he's been really ruthless at times, but he's really focused on getting a group that is very, very committed to the club, I think, and incredibly focused. And that's something that I've really admired about the way he's gone about his work this year.
Moving on to the game on Saturday, but sticking to the last question I've just asked there, one player, I think I said it before the second leg against Coventry in the live pod, me and Ross did, I felt like the game was made for Job. It ended up where Job wasn't the man that was sort of that shone brightly. It was Ballard with the Ballard moment, and I think collectively it was that second half of the extra time where the team sort of pulled together. But I don't like to compare the two, but Jude quite clearly a very switched on footballer, a very switched on man from a very good family. Job's still 19, but I feel like we've seen in these past few weeks like what getting promoted means to him and as a club. I think he looked the most emotional when Ballard scored. We had the celebration when he made the tackle in the first leg against Haji Wright. How impressed have you been with him since he's come to Sunderland as a man that, like, you know, what he says, he's media handling, and the fact he's 19?
Yeah, he's not somebody that we get to speak to a huge amount. I think for reasons that people can kind of deduce probably quite easily. There are obvious some, for fairly obvious reasons, he doesn't do a huge amount of external media. But obviously, you know, you speak to people around the place, and as you say, you forget that he's 19 because there's nothing about his behaviour that comes across like he's someone that's that young. I think probably the thing for me that's most impressive is I think the tactical versatility is the thing that makes me think, you know, this guy's going to the very, very top, because I've seen him play up front and play really well. I've seen him play as a 4 really well. I've seen him play as a box 8 really well. I've seen him play as a 10 really well. I think he's, you know, I think if you stuck him at centre half on Saturday, I think he would do a decent job. I think he is incredibly tactically switched on. And yeah, I think to perform the level he does with the level of scrutiny he gets for someone so young, because like he wins an award and Twitter you see for 3 days is like, oh, well, it's only because of his name and all of that. And that must be incredibly draining. And I assume that he's quite good at sort of removing himself from that and not paying too much attention to it. But his mentality really is exceptional, right? And he is one of the leaders of the dressing room. There's no doubt about that. Like I say, obviously he's got incredible physical attributes, which are going to help him get to the very top. But I think it's his tactical versatility and how switched on he is, how quickly he can do different roles that just make you realise you're talking about a guy who has pretty insane potential. I think because if you think back to that Cardiff game last year where he played up front, if you can just suddenly go and play up front and make a fist of it at his age, then you're talking about a special talent. I think he will just improve and improve and improve and improve.
Dave, I'm starting to think about formations, teams, and whatnot. There's a question we'll ask Phil in a bit because I've asked if anyone has any questions for Phil, and there's only one that everyone's keep asking. You know what's coming, Phil, so prepare yourself. But
well, there was one person who pointed out how bold I've become over the years, which is absolutely which really made me laugh. And absolutely fair as well, by the way. Absolutely fair.
Harsh, not as bold as Dave. Dave, how are you hoping the team sets up on Saturday? Because look, I think when we're looking at the team, I quite like the 4-4-2. I didn't mind the 4-4-2 in the second leg. I think it was quite clear that Mundle wasn't ready to start the game. So I think, look, if you go on Tommy Watson, if not, and I don't think that's the right option at the moment. I think for probably reasons we've covered on other podcasts. Not that I don't think Tommy Watson can't do a job. I just don't think for these magnitude of games it worked very well. But for me, Wembley changes a lot. We'll get on to the Mundle stuff because we're going to have to. But before I do, how do you want the team to set up? And this is, we'll assume Mundle's fit enough to start in this scenario, Dave.
Yeah, I'd want us to set up in a 4-5-1 personally, and just not give up that territory in the middle of the park. However, the thing that supersedes all that in my mind is, and I couldn't be any more in agreement with Phil if I tried, the one person who will know exactly what's going to happen, how it's going to go down, what he needs to do, how he needs to prepare the team, will be Reggie Lebrie. I promise you, whether it's a Job who needs to sit on Gustavo Hamer's shoulder all game, if it's 4-5-1 out of possession, but then a 4-4-2 in possession because he knows that the two hurt them so much earlier in the season and that they're not the strongest at centre half. He will know it all, and I've no doubt that he'll have plan A, B, and C on a piece of paper somewhere. I am weirdly calm. I am going to get nervous at some point, but I am weirdly calm because I just have so much faith in Lebrie. A lot of people will argue that he's not very proactive with his substitutions and leaves them a bit late. But I've said it for months on the podcast. I've said it since probably the third month of the season. His attention to detail is sublime. It's absolutely fantastic. And I promise you now, they'll have had the day off after the Cov second leg. And then they'll have been back in. They will have watched videos. They'll have analysed. Yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to how we perform on Saturday. I'm almost like really eagerly anticipating it. And the more that I hear in the media, especially national media and stuff, of us being underdogs, the more composed I feel, I think. So I'd like to see 4-5-1, but I'm just calm and composed and confident in it, which is a horrible feeling because that's how I felt against Wycombe. And that went quite well, to be fair.
I'm really calm, to be honest. I'm actually really looking forward to the weekend. It's a really odd feeling. I feel like I don't know if it's because that win over Wycombe made me just go, well, I've seen someone win at Wembley now. Now I can just enjoy when I go to Wembley because that demon on my shoulder's gone now. And if we win, brilliant, like fantastic. But I think for me, the Dan Ballard moment, I can hang my hat on that for the rest of my life. I think it's probably the best moment I've ever experienced as a Sunderland fan. And I could do probably 10 podcasts alone on that. But look, it's a big game. And I think I'm naturally going to be a little bit sad if we don't win it. But I feel very calm. But I agree, Dave. I would go with the 4-5-1. I think it's massively important that Mundle's fit. I think when you look at his impact that he had without actually like doing anything specifically, from him coming on and moving Lafay into the middle, I just think it made a huge difference. And I also think this is another talking point, which I want to throw to you, Phil. One of the questions is, well, all of the questions are, oh my God, how fit is Mundle? But the other question I wanted to ask you, say Mundle is fit and we go 4-5-1, or even if he's not and we go 4-4-2, there's a decision to be made over Roberts. A, because he's got an injury, a little bit out of form. B, Riggy had a really good second half for that. Well, a good second half and a good extra time, in my opinion. So I'll give you those two questions. Mundle, what's the latest, I suppose, and how do you set up?
Yeah, I think like so just to echo the first thing, I would, if everyone was fully fit, I would definitely start Mundle and play Lafay as the 10. I think Lafay is the guy who can win you the game, and I think the number of most touches you can get out of him gives you your best chance of winning. And clearly we all saw an extra time about what Mundle had done. Yeah, in terms of Mundle, obviously he'll be desperate to play. If Sunderland can get him out on the pitch, they will. I think that's obvious. I think just from my understanding that the issue isn't fully resolved, and there's a question about obviously how much you can realistically expect him to play in a game of this magnitude. So that's obviously the big decision for Labrise to make. He's got to weigh up, A, can he get him out there? B, does he want him from the start and risk him not being able to complete the game? Does he want to bring him on as an impact substitute? So they're just all the boxes that have got to be ticked. I think the one thing I would say about the Roberts thing is obviously, as you say, it's hard to discuss because like with Mundle, we don't fully know the extent of that calf issue. I did, like a few people mentioned to me about the second leg performance when he clearly wasn't at his best. What I would say is the first leg, he was excellent, like really, really good. Defensively got through so much work, gave Trey Hume so much support. And I thought he had a really good game. It was a really big part of what Sunderland did. And I think he deserves to start if he's fully fit. That's obviously the question mark. And one of the big things that Sheffield, and I'm with you too, I'm quite calm. I think you've got to be realistic about the quality and the individuals that Sheffield United have. And one clear advantage they have is they can keep bringing proven players onto the pitch from the bench all the way through the game. And that is just a fact. That's not even like negative or pessimistic. It's just an obvious fact when you look at the names they've got. Rig and if it's Isidore or Mayenda, those two guys, if they do come off the bench, they have to win Sunderland the game because they need to be the players who make a difference, as Rig did in both those legs. So I don't say it with any... it's not a slight on Rig at all, who I think is amazing and I think will play for England. I just think in this situation, if everyone's fit, I would go Roberts, Mundle, Lafay. But obviously, we'll have to see with Mundle. As I say, it's just I don't think the issue is fully resolved. So you've got to make a call on whether you get him out there, and more importantly, probably how much of a part he can realistically play.
It's interesting that the part of Patrick Roberts there, because I'm probably the number one Patrick Roberts defender at the moment, and I did think he was poor against Coventry in the second leg, but I touched on his defensive work. There's a lot of chat around Roberts with his end product. I personally think if he had much more end product, he'd probably be playing in the Premier League and not have to worry about getting up on Saturday. But I think also his defensive work doesn't get touched on enough. Trey gets a lot of praise, and rightly so, because he's had a great season. He's been out Player of the Year, but it's helped an awful lot by Roberts. To save me from just defending Roberts once again, Phil, what is it that you think people don't always see that Patrick Roberts brings to the Sunderland team?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that sometimes I think it can be incredibly harsh to view the player through the prism of goals and assists, because actually, especially through the first few months of the season, Patrick Roberts was involved in basically every single Sunderland goal. He just wasn't necessarily, it was quite often his pass that then became the next player got the assist or whatever. Now, I don't think there's any doubt that his output hasn't been the same over the last couple of months. Like, I'm not here to say that because I think that's obvious. But I also think that matches the fact that the way Sunderland play has changed, and he isn't getting loads and loads of the ball around the opposition box. And when he is, it's quite often because he's made a 70-yard run to get there. And I do think if you look tactically in that first leg, he was so important in the help that he gave Trey Hume. If there was a player who could carry the ball repeatedly 90 yards from the edge of his own box and stick it in the top corner over and over and again in a game, then they wouldn't be playing in the Championship. So I'm not here to say like, oh, he's perfect. Like his output over the last few months hasn't been great. I think even the biggest Patrick Roberts defender would say that. But I think again, it's all with Lebris. It's trust. It's trust. Does he trust the players to go on the pitch and execute what he's asking of them? Yes, he would like a bit more from Roberts, but fundamentally, he is executing what's been asked of him, especially in the context of the team over and over again. And if you have a team that is happy to surrender possession, you are not going to get the same output from your wingers. You're just not. So I think that if he's fully fit, and that is obviously the question mark, as with Mundell, I think he deserves to play. That's my opinion. But if he doesn't, do I have any reservations about Chris whatsoever? No, of course not. He showed over the 2 legs how good his mentality is. So, yeah, we'll see.
Dave, I'll throw the same question to you. It is a debate, I think, because Riggy's obviously a really good player. They probably both deserve to start, to be completely honest, but you can only put 11 players on the pitch. Do you go, assuming again Roberts is fit, do you think Roberts needs to start ahead of Rigg and Rigg comes on, sorry, with more of an impact? I had swayed towards Rigg myself, but I do think Rigg has made his better performances over the past few months have come as an impact sub.
Yeah, that's definitely one factor to it. What Rigg's been doing off the bench, and he's almost found a different gear because I think he was a little bit leggy and he was a little bit tired, and that's to be expected of someone who's 17-year-old, to be quite honest, having played God knows how many games this season. So I think that does come into it, what he can give the team, and I think Phil's exactly right. It's about the trust that Lebris has in them as a unit, as a squad, tactically. They all know their roles to a T, and I think it's really, really important. The one thing I would say, a game of this magnitude with a squad like ours, a very unique squad, I think. Someone who has played Champions League football, played in old firm derbies, who has played in any number of huge, huge football games, probably needs to start a game like this just to help out those in and around him. I think he's so important. I've always been a big fan. Some people might tell you that he hasn't realised his potential. I understand that, but he's been Chris Rigg. He started out, if I'm not mistaken, 17-year-old at Fulham, and we saw where that took him. Hasn't quite found a home until he came to us, and I think his loyalty deserves a little bit of loyalty in return, if I'm quite honest. And I think I can't tell everyone who's listening how important he will be, hopefully in the starting 11, just for those in and around him. So for me, yeah, Roberts would massively start. I do understand the frustration of it, but again, exactly like has already been said, if he was putting them in the top corner 10 times out of 10, he probably wouldn't be playing for Sunderland, let alone in the Championship. So, yeah.
He definitely wouldn't be. By the way, you said before when you seen Kevin Phillips, you said when you seen him, you turned around and said Jesus. He's actually called God, mate. Just as I just remember that wee joke I went to chuck in, so I'll chuck it in at some point. But I think we're going in as underdogs. I felt like we went in as underdogs against Coventry. I think it's different, Dave, in that sense. Look, I'm looking for positives here. I don't think it really makes that much of a difference. But from a fan base perspective, which is really, really important, I think, as we've seen in the Coventry game, like the fan base is so important in terms of, and I don't agree with this thing that the fans get on the players' back sometimes, but you can feel if someone feels nervous. You can also feel if someone goes, right, we are refusing to not win this game, such as the Wigan game, for example. So I forgot the point I was going to make, but I'll find it again in a minute. Hang on, the port's just taken hold. The point I was going to make, that was it. Does it benefit Sunderland going in as underdogs because it takes the pressure off the fan base a little bit? Because the Wigan game, I felt calm because I felt I'm refusing to leave Wembley without us winning this game. And if we don't, I'm going on there personally to tell every single player exactly what I think about them because we will beat Wigan. I think with this game, I'm calm, but I'm also kind of calm because I know the pressure's off a little bit. Does that benefit us?
Oh, it's a it's a really tough one to call. I like the fact that we're underdogs. I don't know why I like that, but I do. The one thing that I always revert back to, and Labrie always seems very articulate with it. He understands just how much the fans mean and how much encouragement they can bring. And there's just something in my head that makes me feel, whether it's people being scrambled around for tickets, whether it's not seeing people left and right and actual everyone with a common goal. I just think everything's clicked into place, and I hate myself for saying that. I didn't panic when we didn't have the form going into the semi-final. I don't really understand why we were underdogs against Coventry, but as I said on the review show after the first leg, coming away with something to fight for those 46,500 fans when we get back to the stadium light was all we needed. I wouldn't have cared if we were 1-0 down. 1-0, I still think we'd have turned it around. And I've got the same feeling now. I've got the same feeling that no matter whether we're favourites, underdogs, whatever it is, there's just a, you know how much I love mentioning the Simon Grayson juggernaut. You know how much I love mentioning it. And I just feel as though everybody is aligned on the same page. And if you kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not imagine. If you image something so much, it can happen. It will happen. Now, you've already mentioned the two games, but that Charlton game, I remember standing once that corner was swung in and saying to my dad, we might as well head out. My dad will have been 72 at the time. We might as well head for the exit because I know what's happening here. We've had the one bit of luck in the first 10 minutes where we've kicked it back to Dylan Phillips and he's launched it in the back of his own net. We've had it. We all know what happens here. And then Coventry, that what happened to Sunderland normally happens against us and has done my whole entire 40 years on this planet. And there's just something tells me that we'll get over the line this Saturday. There's no rhyme or reason to it. I haven't really answered your question, but that's my passionate retort about it.
I just feel calm because, again, I think we're going as underdogs. I think it benefits me. I've seen Sunderland win at Wembley. I'm really quite zen about it. I'm not zen about anything, to be completely honest. I'm quite uptight about the whole lot. But I walked over the bridge yesterday in this place in Portugal, the minute before we fly out to Wembley, and the accordion player was playing Wise Men Say. And the table I sat at the restaurant today, by complete accident, was table 73. So maybe it is all coming at Millhouse. Maybe you can clip this up and go, idiots who believe in superstition, but I'll clamber onto anything. Phil, the question for you would be the same, really. Do you think that being underdogs benefits Sunderland, or does Reggie Slabreeze, in your opinion, not care less about the underdogs or favourites?
No, I don't think he would care less. He's so sort of single-minded. Analytical is probably the main word. He certainly doesn't go in for anything like that. But I think the club is in a good place. I do agree with that. I think maybe part of the reason that you're probably feeling calmer is those League One playoff finals. It felt like the end of the world if we didn't win because we had another season in League One. Now, obviously, if we lose this game, there'd be loads of negatives. Certain players would go. You never know what's going to happen. You never know how you're going to rebuild. But it doesn't quite feel like the same stakes, does it? Because, there's a chance you go again in the Championship with the core of this team still in place, with the Brees, etc., with some positives to build on. It just doesn't feel like and I'm not playing down the significance of the game because obviously it's absolutely massive, but the stakes just don't quite feel the same. There's not a level of uncertainty of, oh God, what if we lose? And oh God, another year of League One. And I think that is a good place for Sunderland to be in, whether that's anything to do with, whether that affects the players or the staff. I think it probably doesn't, but yeah, I definitely feel like I'm nervous about the weekend, but I'm looking forward to it because it does feel like it's going to be a great occasion. And, as I say, you've got to be realistic. Sheffield United can win the game from a lot of different areas on the pitch because of the individual quality that they've got. But at the same time, this is a good Sunderland side, and there's every chance they could win the game. So let's see.
I don't ask anyone for predictions, but I will ask you for: are you going to go to the new Monkey Trafalgar Square special, Phil? Is that where you're heading? We've just found out there's a new Monkey Trafalgar Square special. Are you geared up for that on Friday? The most important part.
I love the sentiment, and good luck and joy to everyone doing that. I'm not sure I'd be able to produce a match report that the day deserves on the side, but absolute Godspeed to everyone taking part.
Dave, see you in Trafalgar. See you with the glow sticks and get the raving on. Get the raving on. I've definitely had too much port. Get the rave on Friday, mate, and hopefully we're celebrating a little bit. 24 hours or so later. But Dave, Phil, thanks for joining us. Enjoy the game.
Pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
The worst journalist on the Worst Sunderland podcast. You're welcome.